Okay, so exceptions. So yeah, usually it's SQL exception, and then they can be
Hello.
all kinds of, well, for all kinds of reasons. Like if your query is wrong, you're gonna get exception. If your connection is closed and you're trying to query, you're gonna get exception. Like there's so many reasons you can get an exception. And they usually,
Okay, so it's basically just a regular exception. And then another question. Uh, on the line, I believe 53 of your code, the
Mhm,
previous one.
okay.
50. Yeah, you have like get localized message. Why you usually like not use like get message? Why you get like localized message?
Let me see. I don't remember exactly what was that.
It's assert fail and say like that e dot get localized message.
Oh, localized, just a shorter version of the message, just the most important thing.
Because I found it's like when you wanted to display the exception in the specific language, isn't it like that? Because like just get message is gonna get your message, just localized message. I found it
For
and
different language. Okay.
sorry.
Yeah, so you can just use get message. That should be fine.
Yeah, I just have a question because maybe you wanna like point to something specific or you just get used to use it how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't know that this is different language, so it's weird. But anyway, so probably it's condemned the same thing as get message.
Okay, then one more question. Line 59 and line 19. When we make the open, we have like the if connection equals null, and on line 59, the method the result set query, if connection is equal null. If we're supposed to mention it twice, isn't like that kind of like repetition of the code?
Yeah. Hold on. 19, right?
Yes, 19 and 59.
You can just use open, and so you can remove the if statement. Yeah, that's a good catch. It's still the if statement is there. It's just more clear, maybe, but because if somebody's going to read your code, they will think you open new connection every time you query. It's just going to be a little confusing. But then,
Okay, maybe then like we don't need to use it in the open method and just use it every time we open it.
so
What do you think? What is better?
sometimes you can call an open method before you actually query. So you never know, especially if a couple people work on the same. You cannot remove it from open method, line
Uh-huh.
19. You can remove it from line 20, what was that, 49?
59.
59. Yeah. You can remove that if condition from there. So pretty much doesn't do anything, but it's just more, you know,
It's explained more, yeah?
yeah, more
Okay.
clear what's going on.
Okay. That's basically what was the questions.
Can I ask you a question, Nazar?
Yeah.
Last time you've mentioned that it's better to open and close database connection once per run, for example, in a before class or like after class hooks. What if we need to close the statement? For example, we're executing some queries back to back,
Mm-hmm.
and I think because we didn't close the statement, it causes the exception. It cannot execute the next query. Do you suggest like creating a separate method for statement closing?
Yeah, that's what I mentioned we did in our framework. We created like a pool. So each statement, we're not closing the statement, we're reusing the statement. The only thing we missed last time, we can close the result set. And that might actually help your exception. Let me see, where's my share button? And today we'll use another statement different than we did. So in our method convert result set, After we're done converting it, we can actually put finally and close it. Because, okay, that's going to give us, because we are done with the result set, we already have it as a list of math, right? So in this case, we can just close the result set. And since the result set under the statement is closed, you can send another query. Yeah, if you run it in parallel, that might be an issue. So for that, we will do another statement.
Got it. Thank you. And a second question about the data types that we are using in SQL, and like, can we predict what kind of data types are we getting in? I'm not sure how to ask this question. For example, it says a big decimal, like decimal in here. Can we for sure predict that it's going to be like big decimal or long in Java when we get this data?
Yeah, since it's a decimal in SQL, then for sure, because if it's a decimal in the table, the column declared as decimal, then you cannot store strings there. So that's going to cause them an exception when they try to insert something that is not decimal. So then, yeah, for sure, you can say that if it's decimal in database, that you can be certain it's going to be castable to double.
And what about varchars?
Just a regular string. So varchar is a string. Yeah, they can store numbers there, but then it's not something that's going to happen. It's not something that you would want to cast to double. Even if there are digits, if they're declared as varchar, you should keep it as a string too.
It somehow gives me a Java long exception. I'm trying to make it a string, but it says it's a long. It's a varchar, but it's a digit varchar in database.
Mm-hmm. And you're trying to convert it to
string. I thought varchar was a string, so I was trying to assign it to a string. But when I did, it said it gives me Java something long exception and something like
query?
With casting. I was trying to get ID from account where name is and give specific name.
So select ID.
Yep.
From account where
name equals and 300.
Okay, so for that, we'll just print the map, see if that works at least. That's upsetting. second. Okay, that's a bad place for this. Okay, so you're trying to get this ID into string?
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought it was string, so I tried assigning it to a string, and then it tells me that it's a long.
Table. Just like that?
Yep.
You got the print. Cast exception. And that seemed to be long. So in database, you're saying
It's varchar in database.
okay, this should work. Let's check the database. Okay. So string that value is a better way to cast it, but let me see. It still doesn't explain why do we get that exception.
Maybe the way they build the database. I mean, like what you can input only numbers.
Yeah.
What for the ID?
Yeah. Let me see. So ID is varchar, right? Because it seems to me like
Actually, I am so sorry. I just checked it, and it's a big integer.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
that
my
explains-
bad. I'm really sorry.
Okay, that explains it. So yeah. Anyway, you can put anything into string with string that value off, and it's always usually better practice than cast it. Okay, any other questions? So I'll ask the questions. What is JDBC? Ludmila?
I swear I had a feeling that you're gonna ask me today. I was like, okay, today for sure, but I missed the last class, so I cannot answer that question. Sorry, Nazar.
No problem. Yeah, let's go to Donna.
Hello.
Hi.
JDBC, it stands for Java Database Connectivity, and it's a library, a dependency that we add to our pom.xml file, and it establishes connection between our database and our Java file.
Yeah, so you can skip the part when you say that this is dependency. It's a little extra, and also it's a little misleading because we don't add JDBC. JDBC is built in Java. We add the driver for a specific database.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, but in a simple way, you answered it correctly. It just allows us to connect our Java program to the database. Okay, what JDBC link consists of? Vladimir?
It consists of driver type. What is that? Database base server, database. Was some like credentials.
Yeah. And database name, it's optional though.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, and what are the steps that you follow in order to connect to a database with JDBC? RD?
Steps, right?
Yeah.
So it's a registered driver class, create connection by using method, after that create statement, and execute query. And I don't know, for now I understand that close connection it's optional, right?
Yeah.
Because in create connection, it's close connection already include. There?
No. You should mention it when you ask. It's just you should mention it at close connection. Process the result set, meaning do whatever you need to do with the result set and then close the connection.
Okay.
But yeah, very good answer. Okay, let's not take too much time. So let's quickly recap what we got last time.
I have a question also about like the result set. We're gonna like learn all the methods about like the result set interface.
No, not
We
really.
don't need it.
There aren't that many methods. They're just usually to get different types of data, right? Get string, get. The main thing is that you can get by name of the column or the index of the column. Yeah, there aren't something very crazy specific that we need. Let me see. So result set is just for you to get the data, right? Pretty much. Because
Yeah.
for us, we don't submit data to database, and for that, there are better things to do. Okay, give me 1 second, guys, sorry. Okay, sorry guys. So yeah, if we look at the, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
The result set, let's take one. So see, most of the methods are to get something. Get integer, get string, some of them are optional. Also, one thing to mention, result set can go, you can go both ways actually, but we need to do specific settings in order to do that, because usually result set goes into one way only, like from top to bottom. But if you do special settings for that, you can go before, like go back step, go to the first step. One thing to say, I never seen a need for it. So you always need to prepare your script and prepare your query the way that you don't need to jump back and forth with the result set.
So basically, there is no need to use like the methods.
Right. So usually most of the methods are just get something. See, yeah, you can when you have a specific data type, you can look through methods, but we don't need to learn every single one of them. So get string and get time will work the same way. You know, it will just bring you the specific data type. Instead of string, you get time class.
What about the because I found they give like some parameters like type forward, you know, like move that cursor. 'Cause,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. So
basically
that's the setting you need to do in order to move your, in order to have an to have an ability move backwards in the result set. But I never see need for it. Even in our case, we put it in a list of maps. We deal with a list of maps. We don't need to deal with the result set going back and forth. And if you go back and forth, it's not like it's not going to be a predictable set of steps that you can put into a script. It will turn into something hard-coded more.
yeah, sure, I got it. Thank you. Yeah, just like that was the question. Because I don't see it like basically we don't use it, and I said like why we use the result set then.
The result set is just what comes from the database in what format, and then we do our best to turn it into better format for that works for us. The best, another thing before, like I say, if you deal heavy with the database testing, you do like data comparison validation. So you don't prepare specific queries, but you compare a large data sets, one database to another database. So in that case, list wouldn't perform best. You can do your comparison while looping through the data through the result set, because result set, it's like a stream, and we talked about it one of the mentorings. It doesn't load all your data into your processing memory right away. It brings it by chunks. So, but if you convert it into a list, then it sits in your memory as a whole data set. Yeah, but it's a completely different topic for like more
Advanced. I got it. Thank you.
and more for database testing specifically. If you don't do any UI, you don't do API, you deal with only data, then yeah. Okay, because like you see, for UI, API, pretty much anything, you can build a nice query. They'll just give you what you need, and you don't need to store a lot of data into your processing memory.
Nazar, not why, when on interview they asked us what kind of database testing are you doing, we just need to say that we are performing UI and API testing, and we just use database in order to retrieve information,
Yeah.
to retrieve data, and that's it, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
In order to get data, we get data from database for validation or like data validation, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yep, sure. Okay, so again, we have, starting from the beginning, we have JDBC URL that we talked about it, that's doing the connection to the database. That's the main thing. And one thing I would do, just put it in your configuration properties. So okay, that's not it. So we don't have it hard-coded here. And how do you guys get data from properties? Reader, util reader?
Config reader.
Config reader.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So it just looks better, and you have some control. Also, next, so open method. Open method just establishes connection with database, and it remains open, and like process it. It's your memory in a way. So until you close it, okay? And we have it, we only open connection in case it wasn't open. If it was, we will pretty much just ignore it. Close method, we're closing statement and we're closing connection. And making them, turning them to null. So in case we want to open it again, this condition evaluates to true and we will open the connection, right? Okay, that's another thing. Get column names. So we use result set metadata. Remember the data about data, which contains like column names, number of columns returned, and so on. So having that, we are building the list of column names. In this class, we use whenever we are converting our result set. So also query method, pretty much the most important method. You provide a query, we're gonna open connection if it's not open. This we have here for this reason. You see, when I ran my script, I didn't open connection explicitly. Yeah, explicitly. I just ran the query. So pretty much in your tests, your connection will open with the first query. So no need to have it in your before class or before suite. Just whenever you're gonna query the first time, connection will be open. Just have the close connection in after suite.
Can you show it one more time when where we have to put the close?
Whenever you run your test in your hooks, I forgot how it works in Cucumber, but after in test.ng, it's after suite. I don't even have a test.ng, I think only JUnit. So after suite is for test.ng, and whatever you do in Cucumber, I think it's just hooks before and after.
Yep.
Is there such a thing as after class in Cucumber?
There's after class in JUnit.
And you can use it with Cucumber?
I believe so.
Yeah, it just leaves that annotation.
Okay. Yeah, so do that. And what else? And our convert result set method, where we convert result set it into more useful format, list of maps. Right, so list, element of list represents each row. So list represents a table structure. And each map represents a row where the key is column name, and value is data. Okay. So list.size will return how many rows you have. Okay, hopefully that's clear. Okay, let's move on. What I want to do, I'm just gonna rename this. Remember, I mentioned all we have here is pretty much enough for data validation, right? You build your queries. Whenever you run the query in the test, you know what you're looking for. You know what's supposed to be returned. So you can like make the script the way that gets specific data, right? In the list, like we did here with our ID. So this is pretty much enough. So if you don't deal with database a lot, you don't have time to make a like more useful framework for database. That's more than enough. On the other hand, a lot of positions. Especially API positions will require you to deal with database more than you would want to. So let's create a different version. I'll copy some stuff which will remain the same. So the main part is processing results set. Open close methods will be the same. That's pretty much always the same. You always need to open and close the connection. We will need to get column names. So let me just take everything and then eliminate what we don't need. It's going to be easier. Moreover, just add more stuff, because like list of maps method is still useful when you're dealing with a small, when you want to get like only one result, like with ID, for example, or sum of something, or count, you know, when the result of your query is only one record. Okay. On another hand, let me open that presentation that we had. Okay, I don't have anything here, so I'll just explain. You'll see that more when you start learning API, and especially when you work with API. You're gonna deal a lot with objects and like more Java objects. So without you knowing API, it might be a little confusing.
Can you make some notes, please, as well?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
I'm not gonna go deep into API, but okay, that's not what I need. Okay, so when you start working with API, you'll see something like this. So it's the same thing. It's just a way of transferring data, but with limitations. So API is a middle layer between UI and database. So it takes some data from database and brings it to UI. Not always, of course. Also, this API is built for external use as well. You'll learn more about it later, but for now, you'll see something like this. And this, you see, we have the same weight objects. So open close parentheses represent the object. And we have properties like class variables. First name, last name is alive. So string, boolean, integer, another object, address, which is another class that has its own parameters, right? So it's always easy to deal with this type of data in form of Java objects. So the same way with database. So this is just like introductory. And the same way with database. we select, okay, let's do user profile. It'll make a little more sense. My bad. Okay, user profile. So in user profile, you see we have the type of information that we can create a class. So this is like an entity, right? User profile. So we have ID, we have address, we have country, we have date of birth, and so on. First name, last name. So that makes it a class, Java class, a perfect like data type for this kind of structure, right? We can create a class and have all these properties. And with that, we can also create our own methods and just to build the framework in a way, right? So we don't always deal with hash maps, but we deal with actual objects. Even when you deal with UI, did you guys work with that data tables that you can supply like a Java object and it will turn into like list of values?
Do you mean like in feature file?
Yeah. So instead of just taking, when you create a method, instead of taking parameters as a first name, last name, age, you take parameter as a class, person, and then also you can use the table, the cucumber table, and just pass the data table into a method parameters. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you guys did that.
Yeah, what is that?
You can look in Meetup, project, yeah.
So let's see. Yeah, that's not very.
I think it's not full.
Okay. Anyway, so I'll show you how this works, but moreover, you'll go over the same thing again when you go to API. And that's gonna give a little better idea. The only thing is what I'm trying to say. This kind of structure, you're gonna be converting into Java classes when it comes to API. And in order to compare this against the database, it would be nice to have the same object, the ability to convert the result set, whatever comes from database, into the same object. So you can reuse the same methods. You can easy compare one-to-one with equals method and so on. So let's see that. And that when we go through that, maybe it's gonna be a little easier. So I'll just in utils. Okay, just in Java, I'm gonna create a package. Let's call it models. Database models. I'll create first just an example class. Was it user? User profile.
Nazar, should we follow you with typing or just watch?
Yeah, just watch. You can retype with the video if you want, and I'll share this anyway. It just might be a little confusing if you miss something.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So yeah, let's watch for now. So I'll create this just a model for myself for a user profile table. So, and again, I'm not gonna use all the I'm not going to use all the properties because it's going to take a long time, just the most important ones. This one. Okay. And you guys didn't use Lombok?
No.
Okay, let's not use it. So
What you asking for? Log 4?
Logbog, it's kind
Oh,
of
logbook.
tool.
So I'm gonna do this regular way for now, but then I'm gonna show you quickly what Lombok is like. Okay, so just getter setters and constructors. I think I'm gonna need this one, but anyway. So regular thing, class with properties that has getters and setters for each property. Okay. Now I'm gonna need another dependency. I'm gonna share it with you guys. So I'm gonna share in general. So dbutils is just a set of classes and methods that will make it much easier to work with database. It's nothing like a tool. It's just like a helper library. So all common like database classes is already like pre-written in methods. So just to make life easier and not to rewrite things, okay? You can put it in your resume, but it's not something major. It's not like a huge tool, it's just a library, okay?
Which one?
I shared in general, it's Commons dbutils from Apache. So what's gonna help us to do, and that's what pretty much we're gonna be doing, we will try to convert this not into list of maps, but into list of Java objects. So that is going to be more steady and more, it will give you more control. And it's just easier to work this way with Java objects instead of hash map. Especially, like I said, you're going to be creating these Java objects for API anyway, but it's good to have ability to have the same object, but from database, okay? So we will start with database, and then how can we make it work. Okay, give me 1 second. So put I'll make another query method. We actually have it query to result set. What I'm gonna change, I'm gonna make parameters. Can anyone answer what is this?
It's phalanx.
Yeah, what is that exactly?
It's mean like multiple. You can use couple objects here.
Thank you. Good answer. So it's var args, and in a way, it's an array. So when you work with it, you work with it like with an array. But when you call this method, you can provide as many objects as you need or none. So if I provide only string, it's going to call this method only with the string. But if I provide string and another string, the second string will be considered as a array of one element. If I provide 3 strings, first string will be considered as query, and the second 2 strings will be array of 2 elements. Okay? Okay, so what am I doing it for? In order to have more control over queries, for example, if I want to call from, oh no, not from, where, let's say ID equals to 5. And then I have another test case that calls the same query, but ID 144, and so on. So I don't want to have 2 queries that only difference is the ID in the where clause. So I want to have it as parameter, right? So whenever I call that query with different parameter, 5 or 6 and 134, I have only one query, but provide different parameters. So create kind of a method in a way. Is this confusing?
Can you repeat why we put question marks there?
Yeah, so we can have it parameter. So if we provide any ID, it's going to call the query with that ID. So for example, where ID equal 5, I'm going to get this result. And if ID equal 45, so just to have a way of parameterizing queries.
Mm-hmm. We can put their default also, no?
Yeah, if we need to. It's going to be hard to do, but when you do that in your tests, then yeah. Okay, so for now we're just building a utility method that will process these parameters. So if you provide a query, like we have here, and provide different parameters all the time, it's going to query with that parameter pretty much. And that's going to work with any query. So we keep connection is no. The only thing we're gonna change here, I'm gonna be using a different result set. Oh, not the result set, prepare a different statement. Okay, so let's move it inside. Try catch. So why do we have it here and not outside of the class, in the class? Like in class variables, like we have this statement. Why did I create it inside the method? So every time I'm going to call this method, I'm going to create a new prepared statement. Can anyone answer, but based on what you see?
Is every time you open new connection? No.
No.
Maybe because you're using query as a parameter.
Yeah. Yep. Good catch. So because it needs a query. In order to create a statement, it needs to know what query is it going to be. And we cannot have it outside because query will be available like in the method. Like we can reassign it or just assign it out for the class variable, but it wouldn't make any sense. So we create.
What is? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, just what is a prepared statement and how it's different from statement?
Prepared statement is the ones that's tracking this question marks and will help us insert parameters instead of the question marks.
Okay.
We can do that ourselves, but the main benefit of prepared statement, it understands the types. So if you have ID integer, you can say equal 3, right? But if you have name, you need to put this single quotes. So prepare statement will help us deal with that.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Cool. So that's one thing. Now the actual thing, like the most important is to replace our question marks with actual parameters. Okay. So again, remember I said varargs is just an array. If we can do for each. So if we have any parameters, we're gonna be replacing our question marks with the parameters. And we'll talk more about how it works. And I'll show you too. So we have prepare statement, set object. Okay. I cannot do for each. I need index. So we will replace first one. Index starts with 1. This is very confusing, I know, to remember where it starts from 0, where it starts from 1. But if you see it doesn't work, you can just always change it. So in array, index starts from 0. That's why I'm using I. For prepared statement, index starts from 1. That's why it's I plus 1. Okay. And return prepared statement, execute query. And the same thing, it's going to return a result set anyway. it's just gonna help you parameterize your queries. And we'll run some examples now and see how useful it's gonna be. But also before we go, I wanted to add another. If we don't have any params,
Zara, I have a question.
Yep.
How we handle if our object of param is duplicate?
What do you mean by that?
Well, our ID can double there, remember? Balance, names.
Yeah, so we will have multiple, that's we're gonna go next. How do we deal with this? For now, we're just getting result set. So result set will return let me show an example. For example, we will use country equals US. So for now, we're not processing anything. We're just returning result set. So that's what we're gonna get in the result set. And then we will create more methods to actually deal with that result set.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, for now, it's just a result set. So no matter how many objects, we're still gonna go, we need to like do a result set next until we reach the end and so on. But going forward, we will create a list of objects this time, not the hash map. Okay. Let's see an example of what we did so far. So remember, pretty much I just copied from version 1. And what I changed is I made my query parameterized. I'm going to show you an example and explain that again, how that works. Let's say, let's do the same query, just not to waste time. Okay, so select everything from digital bank user profile. We don't need digital bank here. Where country equal question mark. Now create result set. Version 2. And I provide the parameter US. You see, even IntelliJ tells me it's parameter starts, and I have only one parameter, US. And I'll use the usual method that we had so far. Convert result set. See, now we can call it multiple times for different tests, just having one query. If that's going to work. Something is off with your configuration files, your configurator. Okay, I'm not going to deal with this now, so I'm just going to put it back. Okay. Let's print it in your line. Yeah, so this, again, guys, this can be a lot of information, but you should be very good if after the API and if you do some practice, because it seems a lot, but if you spend some time practicing it, it's actually very straightforward. So you see, we only have US results. Let me show you another example.
If you add one more country, it's gonna work as well.
What do you mean?
Like and US and something.
Like US, comma, United States? Like this?
Maybe some other countries. I'm not sure you have it, but anyway.
Yeah, United States is as a separate record you see in database. So United and USA too.
Yeah.
So for that, we need to add it to the query as well. Right? We have only one question mark, so we should have only one parameter. Country equals another question mark, not and or country equals another question mark. Right, so now we have United States, and let's put USA. So what I was going to with the explanation, see, it has USA, US, United States. So what's happening? The first parameter in the list will replace a first question mark. Second parameter in the list provided will replace the second question mark. It's by the index. And the last or third will replace the third question mark. So you have to pay attention how you put in what order you put your question mark, your parameters. They have to represent the question marks that you have. So for example, in this case, it wouldn't matter, right? Because we're using the same column. So if we change it, it wouldn't change the result.
But can we put order by in our query? It will help us.
It will help for your particular reason. In this case, not really. Yeah, you're trying to do
organize, you know, US to US.
Just to see order country. Yeah. What I wanted to do, different example. Instead of country, and DOB is more equal to for example, so if we're in 2020, then let's say so date of birth is more than 2002. Oh, hold on. Like that. Again, 2 question marks, 2 parameters. We don't have any examples. Let's do less than. only US citizens that are younger than 18 years old, something like that. We can make a specific date, but what I want to show you, the position of the parameters matters because US goes under the country and date goes under the date of birth. Again, first in the list of params will replace the first question mark. Okay, any questions?
Can you please show one more time your query method? Thank you.
Yes, of course. You can remake things, but yeah, so this is the part when we replace our question marks with parameters.
I think I have the same code, but my code showed me error on line 77, like yours. I see my file. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so that's already solves a lot of problems. If you're gonna store you can have only one query for the class and just run that query with different parameters. Depends on the test that you're doing. Okay. And going forward, as an idea, you can create like your own. See, in this case, it replaces question marks. You can create your own marks or characters, like parameter or something like that. So you can also parameterize column names and things like that. So where parameter equals question mark. So you can have parameterized column and parameterized question mark. That's just for something to consider, maybe. But yeah. On the other hand, it's gonna get confusing. So this is just a good method to go with. Okay, so we were going to convert our result into a list of user profiles instead of list of math.
Excuse me, can I ask you, this user profile class, can we call this as Pojo or
Yes.
not?
Yeah.
Yes? Thank you.
Let me leave a note. So Pojo or Bean is a model class. So Pojo or Bean. Pojo, first of all, it stands for plain old Java object. Like you see, we created user profile, and it has nothing. It's not a functional class. It's a model. And I created it for specific data, like data type or data model that comes from database, which is result set, and specifically for what we were doing user profile. And remember, we were talking about JSON. So the same thing, in order not to work with all these weird strings and braces, it's always easier to convert it into Java object. And then you can have specific methods, you have methods that are working with this data type and so on, that accept as a parameter, instead of dealing with this weird string. Okay, so that's what Podger is, and they usually people also call beans. So beans or Podger is the same thing. Okay, so let's quickly cover that. And like I said, for that we imported that library. So you can see we can do that on our own. We can have result set, just setting values for example, in constructor, we can have this.id equals rs get int id, something like that for each of the parameters. So we can create this thing ourselves, but since we have a library, we don't need to go through that trouble for each bean that you create. So besides user profile, we also have users, we have payments, we have all different type of tables. So if you're gonna do that type of conversion, it's just gonna take all your time. Right. Okay, so I'm gonna use, let me see, what was the name for it? It's a bean processor. And that's where the name is from. Bean is the model, right? So it's processing your models. Okay, so now instead of convert result set, we will rename it and have another method. So we need to, again, result set. The only different and weird thing that you're gonna see here is this. Okay, so does anyone know what is this for?
Table?
So this is a way to postpone the type. Remember, we had, usually when you declare a list, you should have a special type here, string or integer.
It's a
So,
generic data type, right?
What is that?
Generic data type.
Yeah. So you don't need to know about it because our use will be straightforward and plain. Well, we're not going to even deal with it. We're going to just have our processor do that for us. To bean list, that's what they have, result set and bean class. So in a simple way, T declares generic data type. Very rare that someone would ask you this on interview. Okay. And you don't really need to know what is it in order to use it. which is in a way postpones since we're dealing with beans, we want to have a generic method that would convert your result set into any bean, right? We don't want to create a specific method for each bean. Like we have, like I said, we have user profile, but we might also decide to create bean for roles or account tables, or what was the most important one? Account transactions. So we don't want to create method for each bean just by having this specific data type here. And I'll show you how that works. Okay, we have user profile. Let's keep our query. So what we need to do now, we need to give a class of the bean that we want to use. So in our case, it's user profile is the only one that we have. So that's what the T was for. The type will be declared when we provide it. So we provided user profile class. This method will convert T to user profile class. So now we will have list of user profiles objects. Okay. Okay, so this is that. Now let's print it out. So just for each. And in order to see something. So what do I need to do in order to print my object in a nice way?
To string method?
Yeah. Nice. Who got OCA, by the way, guys?
Nobody?
Nobody did?
Yeah. Can you give yours to us?
Say that again?
That's a stupid joke. I was like, can you give us yours?
Oh, my score? Oh, my OCA. Okay, yeah, that won't work. Anyway. Okay. Yeah, you know, if they can track it. So if you're planning to add it to your resume, but you don't have it, don't do it. Because you can actually, there is a way to check.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah. Just Google it. That's it.
Yeah.
We can Google your name and we'll see your OCA.
Seriously, you can see my score too or no?
I'm not sure about score, but if you Google your name or Oscar's name, you'll be able to see it.
Have you Googled my name?
No, I'm not that.
Creepy.
Oscar's name, yes.
Okay, good. So, where I was going to, just to show you how it works, print it out. We can start talking about it. I'm not certain it's going to work right away. We might need to specify. Okay. So I declared it, but I never assigned it. So I'm just going to put the assignment or new object instantiation inside the open method. I mean, if we don't have a connection open, we don't really need the bin processor, right? If we didn't query anything, what are we gonna process? So you can place it anywhere. That's not a big deal. You can even have it here. Anyway. These things are not really important, right? One more thing, you need to have a empty constructor, or just, how do you call it, default constructor?
We have it by default now.
Yeah, but if I override it with this one, it's gonna be gone. Yeah, if you don't have any constructor, it should work. It's by default. So you see now it's in a form of object. And it has, even though I queried everything, right? So I selected all the columns, it only assigned the columns that I declared in my bin class. So only ID, address, country, first name, last name, region, social security, and title. So what it gives me, first of all, it's easier than working with maths. And while building a framework, you can have multiple methods specific, for example, for user profile. Like if you want to, user profile might not be the best option, the best example, but for example, if we create the same bean for account transaction, we can have a whole bunch of helper methods like calculating, multiplying, dividing. So it gives you that flexibility, and it's just, the design is nicer. So if you still can create methods for the hash map, but always dealing with actual Java objects is always more stable and just more sufficient way of working than with the hash map. Okay, do you guys have any questions so far? We'll be going over this thing a couple times, so it's not that we're gonna be done right away now with it.
I have a question. So this model we will use if we will specifically testing database?
No, we don't test database. Remember, we just use for comparison. You will use these models with API. So one thing, I didn't want to get too much in the beginning, but now you see it and you think, why do we need it? We don't create models for database. For database, we create queries. Models will be created for APIs. And you will see that, and that's pretty much all you're gonna do with the API testing. You're gonna create models and try to convert this weird thing into your model. From database side, we need to match that model with the query and have this method that will actually do the conversion from result set to the model. But we don't create models for database unless you really deal a lot. Yeah, that's going to be your judgment. But mostly, models will be created for APIs. On database side, we will need to match the query. APIs, they will not bring you same data from single table. They will bring you data from multiple tables. So you will need to do joins. We cannot create model for every single possible join, right? That's going to be worthless and just too much work. But for every specific API request, we can create a query. So you would have to get the join, and you would have to get the columns. So for example, if we have address, okay, let me stick with transaction. Amount, description, running balance. So in API request, they might be called different. For example, maybe amount standing or transaction description or running balance this way, right? So on our end, what we're gonna do, we will just match the query, right? We can rename our columns. Amount standing, just the amount. So again, you will create beans for API. From database side, you just have a method that would convert result of the query into the same bean. All you need to do is to match the query, build the query, change the column names when you need to, join different tables when you need to. So you get the same data as you would get from API. Does it make sense?
Data is the same, but like here you have the order, correct? I mean, you put like first ID, address, county, and it goes in that order. Before, like the previous class, we don't have that order.
What order again?
I mean, like the columns, they go like how it's supposed to be. But before we don't have it because we store it in the map, hash map.
Yeah, yeah.
And right now it has the order. That's like the difference as well.
No. Not only that's the difference. So it's always easier to work with objects. I don't know. It gives you control. First of all, you can create a specific methods for example, user profile. You can have get all, for example, static method. We'll go there. Also, you can have methods that would accept user profile. Static. Right. So if you would have a bunch of methods that accept hash map, there is no stability into type. There is no type restrictions, right? So you can put any hash map into any method, and it's just complete mess. And if you have a bunch of methods that accept hash maps, you know, and you have 1,000 of those, you'll have to remember each and single one of them, which hash map you have to put in which method. So it's always easier to work with the types, data types. That's why Java is a type strict language. Did that explain anything? Like, did it answer your question?
I wish, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, just trust me. It's easier to work with objects than hash maps. And yeah, we'll create some methods, you'll see that too. So, any other question? Quick questions?
From your point of view, which one is more difficult, API or UI?
It has its own points. Difficulty will depend on the project, of course. You can have super simple APIs and crazy UI with, with all this, what you call them, frames, iframes, and everything is dynamic. So on that kind of project, it's easier to work on API side, right? So yeah, it depends. It also depends on your preference, what you like more. I would say they're equal. It's just with API, you don't see anything, but it's always faster. It's always more stable. So that's the main thing. If UI tests might fail for a whole bunch of reasons, but API tests usually strict, like stable. Stable is a better word for it. So you will not have to debug as much as you would with the UI tests. And it's faster. With the good framework API, you can write API tests very quickly. Oh, I mean with UI as well, actually. So it's more depends what you like more, because you're gonna be dealing with it. If you enjoy it, then it's gonna be easier for you.
What is harder to automate?
I think UI will be harder. Just so many different locators, so many different elements, and so on. API usually strict, like database. It has a limited set of data. It has some controls, give or take. You can like parameterize, provide different parameters, if you can say it this way. But still, it's not as much as database, not as much as UI. So I think API it just sounds complicated, looks complicated, and you don't see anything. That's why it seems complicated, but it might be actually easier.
And summary from soft skills, what the percentage of automated on your job?
Automation versus manual?
Yeah.
Like coverage?
70.
Depends. So on the database side, it's 100% because manual testers are working on different parts. Let's say different projects. So for me, it's only automation. If I see there's a lot of manual work, they will usually put another person to do that.
Oh, you have a big team, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Nazar, why do we learn database first and then API? It looks for me that it's more like logically right to learn first APIs and databases.
I agree.
Yeah, I thought so too, but I don't know. On the other hand, you don't know that API. What is then? If you don't know about database, then you have no idea where is data coming for this API and what is it and how is it.
Yeah, maybe.
It's like two sides of coins. Yeah. It's just confusing for us because we take a little extra step with this conversion. So it's easier for you later with API, and it's just better when you get to work. And it's something, if there is an existing framework and it's still not too big to refactor, it's something that you can propose to do, because I've seen a lot of frameworks that people in every single method would have their string query declared, have some special characters, whatever you want to call them, and do the replace, query replace, param, in every single method for every single query. This is horrible. Like, it's not only horrible, it's just takes so much time. Much easier would be, right, like the method that created the utils query, same query method, either with params or without params. And it's gonna do the job, no matter what query, no matter what params, and so on. And also converting to use to the object. Again, same thing I've seen a million times. Then people have, for each of their beans, like I talked about method, they would accept the result set and do the conversion. Like hard-coded conversion, something like that. This is constructor. So yeah, this dot id equals result set get id. This address equals result set get address. No, and these are huge. So it's just too much work. It's not stable, and it's better to have one method that would convert you any object, like any result set, into any object, as long as they match the names of the columns. Any other questions? Yeah, going back, if we wouldn't do this, we wouldn't even touch API, So yeah, so database makes sense too.
I see. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, let's go for a break. Prepare questions if you have. We'll answer after the break and continue with this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could you please send your class in Slack?
I can't hear you.
Could you please send your class in Slack?
Class is like, oh, okay. Which one?
I think the one you just. Yeah.
Profile or utils? I'll send both. Okay. Yeah, I can't hear you. Sometimes I can, and then I just can't. Seems like you're far away.
Utils.
Utils. Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
See you guys in 15 minutes. Thank you. Yeah, I'll share it right now. Hi guys, are you back?
Yes.
Nice. Anyone has any questions while we're waiting? No questions? Okay, so yeah, so we got some cool stuff going on. Like now we have parameterized queries. We have method that converts our queries into results, into list of objects, which is cool.
Can you share the screen, please?
Oh, I don't. Sure. Do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so that's that. And just do some examples on things you can do. For example, in user profile, we might have an option to user profile class tree. Get here. So methods like this, get by ID, for example. So you can have a specific query that queries by ID. And then we use the method that we created, convert result set to beans, check if we have any results. If it's empty array, we just return null. And if it's not, we will return the first item, the first element of the array list, right? So now, somewhere in your tests, you can get, what is it, user profiles, get by ID, let's say. So now you see we kind of reduce the level of abstraction. So now in your tests, you don't have to write so much code, open connection, query, this and that. You can have methods like this that would just get you stuff by ID, if that would work. Okay, yeah, it did play with the constructor again. So this is like the main benefit. And you can have many of these, like I said. And the most important part, you will already build this beans for API testing. For database testing, you will only need to create a query that would combine all this information from database. That will return the same information, but not from API and from database on the other hand. So you will simply have, and you pretty much, you can have all your, like when you're testing a specific functionality on the API side, you can have specific tests that you're gonna learn and build, but you can also have a database comparison test for each API if you do this way. You can have a bean from database, like user. Let's say this one. And you can have the same bean, which you'll learn later, from API. I'll just create a new for now. And all you need to do in the test is to assert equals, right? From database is equal to from API. And remember, equals method in Java object compares all the properties. So pretty much you'll compare everything one-to-one, ID, address, country, date of birth, everything. You can have specific tests, and on top of that, you can always add database validation for each API. Like I said, you will already have the beans for API. All you just need to do is to create a query and use this method that we built, which is this one. Any questions so far? Okay, so are you guys clear on this? Should we move on? Should we do more examples?
Let's do more.
Okay. Let's do more. Let's do the account transaction table. And let's do with the join. So account transaction, we have account type, or not transaction type. And state. Yep. Okay. So let's say we're gonna let's do a star from now, and then we'll limit the result. to ID.
Can you do in this scenario using?
No, because they have to match. So we didn't get the using, but because we don't have matching column names. You see, in all our tables, we have transaction state ID equals ID. If it was transaction state ID in both of the tables,
You mean naming, right?
yeah, then you can say using.
Uh-huh.
So instead of on, you can do using and transaction state ID because they are the same names in both tables.
I understand. I understand.
Yeah. I don't have that, so on is fine. It's always something I misspelled. Transaction.
I missed T3 in 24.
Oh, thank you. It still didn't help.
Because of the digital bank.
Thank you, Max. Okay, so now let's remove some stuff, something we're not interested about. So we don't need all the IDs, they're confusing. For customer, let's say we want to have description. So we'll do T1 description. As then amount. What else? Running balance. Transaction date. Transaction date, I believe it's T1 still, right?
Should we put T1 before running balance too?
Not necessarily, but yeah, let's do that. Yeah, it's only running balance only in one table, so that would be fine. But yeah, that's clear this way. And from other tables, category, which is T2. And transaction name. Again, T2 name. And T3 was state. So let's say T3 name as transaction state. Let's run it. Okay. So let's imagine this, that we can get this data from API in this format. Just simple format, the names of the attributes, as you see here. These are names of the attributes. Will match ours. That's why we changed our names. We could have kept them ugly, but we want to match API response. So we have description of transaction, deposit, amount, running balance, transaction date. Let's make that lowercase. Transaction name and transaction state. So we're gonna use this query to create a bean. Again, beans will be created for API. For database, you need to match the query. So DB models, transaction, we got description. Amount. Let's make it string. Okay. Transaction name and the last one, transaction state. Okay, so while we are here, I'm gonna use Lombok. So that's just a dependency, and again, you're gonna use that for API anyway. I'm gonna share it here. And I'll explain you what that is. Also, when you include that dependency, you might need to enable Lombok or enable, I forgot how it's called. Usually it prompts you when you don't have it. Let's see. Okay. That was enable annotation processing. Yeah. Okay, so enable annotation processing and enable. That's for Lombok. So what Lombok is, where was I? So with this annotation data, it automatically creates getters and setters for your class. Also constructors. Constructors a little bit tricky, so we might need to add specific annotations. But let's see, data usually is supposed to cover toString method, getters, setters, equals method, hash code, and basic constructors like all args and no args. So pretty much all we did here with so bunch of code that's covered by data annotation. It's highly useful. Okay.
Is it library? Lombok, is it library?
Yeah, it's a library. Yeah, I shared the dependency in general.
Can you
Thank
show
you.
again how you do enable?
Just search here.
Yeah, but what you type there?
Enable annotation and notation processing.
All right, thank you.
And then the mark here. Okay, now let's use our query.
Can you please send this query?
Can we do what?
Can you please send this query?
Oh yeah,
Thank
sure. There we go. So let's say, let's create a method so we don't keep bugging the main methods. Okay, where was I? So db deals, oh no, let's say first the query. Another thing, you can store queries in property files, configurations properties. You can have a separate one for queries. It's just your reader doesn't work. Also, that might not be the best idea. You will just look how it is in your automation, or if you create automation, decide how you want to do it. But it's the same thing. You know how to read from property files. Just if you store the queries in properties files, that doesn't change anything. Sometimes it's easier, have it in a method because you can read it and know what's going on. You don't have to go through properties, but also it looks better if it's in properties. So it's kind of up to you how you decide to do it. And you know how the reader works, so you can fix that one. I'll put it in methods for now. So you can say list of transaction. And I'll just add where. ID, and we are converting our result set to transaction class. And the same thing if it's empty, just return null, and else return transaction list get 0. Okay. Let's see some example. So 83. So you see the level of abstraction in my main method, or the same way you can do in your tests, your step definition, everywhere else. I only have one simple line to get a transaction by ID. And not only a transaction, it's a combination of 3 tables. So again, I build this query to match my API structure. So my API returns me all these items, and they're named differently. That's why I renamed my columns. Right? So let's put some notes. First of all, serialization, deserialization. These keywords are going to be used a lot with API, and these keywords are asked a lot on interview. You are going to be learning it. It doesn't really apply to database, but what we did, convert result set into Java object. It's called deserialization. So in simple way, deserialization is a process converting a byte stream, or let's say any other data type, into Java object. So we are deserializing it. So if it comes in our way, it comes in a result set. So it's a different type, and we convert it in Java type. It comes in JSON. Again, I'm going to bring that picture. It comes in JSON. We convert it in Java type, Java object. So this process called deserialization. One thing, it's not really for the database, because we cannot go back. We cannot convert the process. We cannot turn from Java object into result set. It doesn't work like that. When you deal with API, you can go both ways. You can convert this thing into Java object, and you can convert Java object into this thing. It's just, it doesn't matter, right? It goes both ways. In our case, it goes only one way. We can only deserialize it. So it's more appropriate to call this mapping. So we are mapping our result set to Java objects. Okay? Again, let's put here, beans are created I might be misspelling this words too. Deserializing. objects equals assert equals, and so on. Yeah, we can call this data validation. So you validate that whatever you get from API is identical to whatever you have in database. Cool. Okay. Any other questions?
So here we don't need like any like connections and statements and all that stuff.
We don't need it, remember, but we already hide it under the method. So if I go get by ID, I go to query, query already opens the connection.
Yeah.
That's covered. So just create a simple way for me to write tests. I don't have to deal with this every time. So just create a level of abstraction. You call a simple method, and behind it, there's many methods that do all this different unneeded stuff, repeatable stuff. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you keep this approach, you can have your test cases like with 2-3 lines of code. You just create test cases fast. If your framework built like nice, in a nice way, solid, then it's always easy to do it this way. Have how do we call them, step definitions. Even step definitions can contain one line of code. So we can pass this ID from Cucumber parameters, right? So the step can sound like I get a transaction record from a database by ID and pass it and just return this, So it's parameterized Cucumber. You just go this way. Okay. Again, you will have this from API anyway. So on database side, you just create a query. You might create specific methods. So in API side, you can get by ID too, like get by ID or get by transaction type, something like that. We can have those methods too, right? It's just, if we want to get by type, we would have the same thing, but in where clause, we would have T2, what was it? So T2 category, I think, transaction type. Transaction name, transaction, okay, there is no type. So by transaction category, so we can say where T2 category equals, have it parameterized. And now you can get all the transactions by type. And let's do that. So let's say not type. So category. Now we will use the same query. So if we're gonna reuse it, we can have it outside. just base query. Just append the where clause. Where IP. Here we're gonna use where T2. Well, we have transaction type. Anyway, we'll proceed with category. Okay, so I'm adding to my base query, the query I shared in general, a where clause. In this case, where clause has T2 category, not the ID. And I'm gonna provide it with my method parameter. So in this case, I'm not checking if list is empty because we can have multiple records under the same category, right? So we are returning list. So this method already returns an empty list if there is nothing found. So that's covered. Now let's just see how it works. Just need to know what categories are there. Credit, debit, either. So remember, this get by category returns a list of transactions. I'm just printing them out for each method. And we can check that they're all credit. So as an example, you might have an API that has this ability for you to provide category that you want to get. So if you want to check that all categories are included, so you can do the same thing from database and just compare the counts, right? Size of arrays. You can go further and compare each one to make sure that the list that you got from API contains all the elements as the list you got from database, and so on. So there are many things you can do, especially when it comes to API, because API is highly dependable on database. And a lot of the times, the only way to validate it is against the database. There are functional APIs too that you don't really need a database for, but it's a common thing to compare database API response against database. Okay. Any questions, guys? So we got transaction, we got profile. Are we clear on the methods that we have here? Should we go over any of these? So is everything clear, or is everything so confusing that you guys don't have any questions?
Second one.
Second one, yep.
We have to go through by ourselves, you know. step by step.
Like general idea. You don't have to perfectly understand every single method, but from the first class, but like general idea. Did you guys get what do we do, why do we do, and
Yeah, on a high level, yeah, but it's like still, I'll need to rewatch it to like make sure I understand like everything correctly.
I'm not sure rewatching will help me at all.
yeah, practicing will help, that's for sure. Oh, okay. So with that said, should we do another example? Should we do other things?
Zara, for now, it's just executing query through the IntelliJ, right? We don't make any, so I don't see any assertion, any test, nothing. We just execute, right?
Yeah, so assertion, you're not gonna see any assertion. We're not gonna deal with UI. We don't have much time for that. And first of all, second of all, it's more appropriate with API. So you have a way to deal with database. You already learned Cucumber. You have the UI test, and I don't see any like stoppers for you to add simply to what you have already existing. Let me try. What was your application?
Meetup.
Digital Bank or no? We have Digital Bank. You didn't work with Digital Bank for automation?
It's
Yeah, we have a digital bank.
group project.
Yeah. So just add specifically. You have group projects. So pretty much you have to what you have to do for practice is try to add database validation for your test. So if you have a test that creates a new checking account, UI test, you can create a query and run a query against the database in automation way, like from Java, that validates that the, what is it, savings checking account was created in database with your account name that you provided while you were creating it with Selenium and initial deposit. So whatever things you provide here with Selenium, you have the values, so you can keep them, and then when you run, store them in a variable, and then when you run database query, you just compare against each other. That account name is as you provided, deposit amount as you provided, and the type is the same. So things like that, right? What else? Again, credit applications. You provide all these things. Whatever you provide here, you can compare against database. Also, like we have a lot of things, checking that we looked, savings, same thing. If you have any tests, you can do database validation. Like, give me some example of the test. I don't see. Oh, account linkage. Remember, we had in database, we have that linked accounts. So you can compare that they were linked in database. Account. Co-owner ID should relate to that. And there was linked accounts. Either table or, yeah, linked account. Yes, you have another table here, so you can verify that it was linked. in the tables, like in the database. We see a lot of things. This is just examples. Of course, you look at your tests and see if there's anything you can validate. So you can validate anything that you submit. So in this case, we submit, I don't know how it's works, but there's an error here. And we can create a deposit. So in this case, we submit deposit amount. So you can verify that deposit was submitted and record is created in database. Same thing for withdrawal. This is deposit. Again, transfer between accounts. Same thing, it's going to reflect in database from one account to another account. So one account should have withdrawal transaction created and another account should have deposit transaction created. Example, I'm not exactly sure how it works, this application, but there are many things you can compare. So what do you see as a challenge here to do that? Like, what do you guys think is challenging right now for you to just add another the steps, like cucumber steps to your existing test?
Yeah, I have a question, Nazar, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry. So last time I think Donna asked you about a withdrawal test scenario, and you said that we have to deposit some money before we withdraw for the positive scenarios. Can we do that using the databases, like updating the database with the some amount
Not
and then
recommended.
validating?
Not really recommended, and I don't think you'll have access to. I don't know. Did you guys try updating anything? I don't think we have access to update.
We do.
Oh, we do. Then yeah, I mean, that's not a problem. If you think that that's easier for you, then for sure.
But usually in the workplace, we will just have read and like
Yeah.
select. Okay.
It depends. Some company might provide you, but still usually people prefer not to, because there might be different tests. There might be different people, like many people trying to update something, and you know, things can get broken, deleted, and yeah, just updating everything in database directly might not be the best way of doing it. And if you update in one table, this will not reflect in another table. I don't remember which exact table it was, but account transaction, I also saw this like balance or running balance, some other tables. I just forgot which one. So things like that. If we have the balance in some other table, it won't update.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know everything what we need to update, and that's usually getting easier to do it from database. But in work, most likely you will have an API for these things. An API is as easy as database, like as fast. An API covers everything, so it will update all the tables pretty much. So it's like a loud way to update records in database. So usually better idea to do that either API or UI, because it's built for it, you know. So you don't have to worry breaking anything, or you don't have to worry not updating one table but not updating another table and so on.
I see. Thank you so much.
Yeah, when it gets to database, you guys should have, I'm not sure what kind of APIs there will be, but I think you should have that particular one for updating balance. Okay. Let's see if I even have the number here. Okay, since we have, it's like 15 minutes, it wouldn't make sense to start a new topic. I mean, there are no new topics actually. We could also add like updating just in case if you'll need. And we're probably gonna do that next class. We'll quickly do the queries and add automation methods for that. So with that, do you guys have any questions? Let's quickly recap what we did today. Maybe that's gonna be helpful. Okay, so column names, method, we have the same. It's just with the result set metadata, it gets the column names, right, of the returned set. So again, it doesn't get column name of the table, but what is returned by the query. So if I have this return, my list of column names will be this 7 values, right? Okay. Again, the query method, it returns a result set. We will keep it, or we'll create a wrapper for this. We'll see for a better way to deal with this. So again, we added parameterization. So you can provide a query with question marks, and each question mark will be replaced with an object from parameters list, right? And again, first parameter will replace first question mark. And your number of question marks should be equal to number of parameters. You will get an exception if you have too many parameters or not enough parameters. This exception will come from prepared statement. So you see prepared, that's done by prepared statement. We just tell them the index of question mark and the object we want to replace it with. So that's why we're looping through an array of our parameters, and first question mark replaced with first parameters, second with second, so on. Okay, and then exception handling. Next, so converting result set to beans. This is probably the most confusing one. But again, you see, we didn't do anything here. We just called the method from bean processor. Bean processor is created specifically for this reason. Actually, this library that we imported, Apache Commons, it has its own query runners. So instead of query method, you can use their query if you want to look through that. But I didn't find them as useful that you would want to spend your time for. So pretty much we can do everything with only some of the methods, but the most important methods. But if you're interested, you can look through. They don't have any videos, but they have a documentation, which is fairly straightforward for each method they have. Okay, again, the T is just a postpone type. Don't be afraid of this. It's not something you really need to understand. Like I said, it's just because we have T here and T here. So whatever class we provide, that's the type of the list we will return. So if we provide transaction.class, the return type will become list of transactions. Okay. And the usual list of maps, which simply converts your result set into list of maps. Cool, and the close method. Let's look at the beans. So again, with beans, we can put a note. Again, names should match. So as we see names in the result tables, column names, that's the only way this library we imported can map your data from result set to a specific variable in your bean, right? And again, we don't create beans for database purposes. You will create them, you will have them for APIs with database or without database, doesn't matter. So on database side, if you want to add data validation step to your tests, you can match the query to your data, to your API data. So if you get this type of information from API, you will need to build a query like this with joins, changing names of the columns. So again, we can map our result set to the same bean. We're not going to create a specific bean for database, okay? Unless there is a table that you work with a lot and you want to add a lot of validations to your UI tests, some other parts of API tests, and so on, then you can create a bean for a table, for example, if you think it's going to help you, and have methods like this: get by ID, get by category, so on. Cool. Okay, so this is that. Okay, it doesn't get much further. So next, and again, if you're super confused and stressed out, don't be. Version 1 will do all the job. You'll just need to have a little more lines of code in your tests in order to process your map, right? Yeah, that does the job. So many people just prefer this method and never need the conversion. The conversion to objects is just to make your life easier, right? So you can write your tests in an hour instead of 5 hours.
But basically, we're achieving this just to adding one more utility class, right?
But these are separate, so you would keep only one.
Yeah, but like longer one.
Yeah, I would. I just prefer to keep both, so you see the difference and you can come back. But yeah.
Can you push the code to your Git, please, as well?
Say that again.
Can you push the code to your Git as well?
Yeah, sure. So were you guys able to pull from that Git repository I shared?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Yeah, so do that. Also, any other question?
I have a question also. The data assertion that we create, it's assertion or annotation? I'm confused.
Oh, data annotation.
Annotation. We created in order to not to create all these constructors, getters and setters, only for this reason.
Yes, yeah. So that just simply replaces it. So if you look, you might not be able to look. Okay, yeah, I don't see that. But whenever code compiles in your target folder, you can see compiled class. So if you open that compiled class transaction, you will see that getters and setters are present. So data is just during compilation, it inserts them. So they're still there. It's just you don't have to write them. You don't have to have them in your class file.
But we can use getters, setters,
Yeah.
and constructor.
Yeah, so if we look transaction, we have this get, what was it, transaction, get by ID, get date, get description, get name, get transaction date. And they're all here, but they're not here. It's just a way to avoid all this, unnecessary lines of code. But keep the functionality, which is very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, guys? No more questions? So
Thank you so much, Nazar.
yeah, I'm gonna push this. I'm gonna share everything else. We are good on the next class is on Wednesday, right? So it's gonna be last class. We'll go over update, insert, update, delete. We'll go over quickly and try to add some of the methods to our automation.
Thank you, Nazar.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.